When I moved from Zurich to Los Angeles as a 12-year-old in November 2016, I would tell people I was half German and half Japanese. I didn't have the concepts or vocabulary that I could use today. Nikkei was a foreign word to me, and the idea that I was Asian hadn't crossed my mind, even though growing up, I had been the only non-white person in my class. In racially homogeneous but multinational Switzerland, race was rarely discussed. I was simply German on my father's side and Japanese on my mother's side, just as my best friend was Italian and Swiss. It was only when my family went to a reading of Fred Korematsu Speaks Up a few weeks after we had settled in Los Angeles that I noticed the way people in the US spoke about their identities was different. Korematsu was Japanese American? A Nisei? I was confused. I was neither American nor was I Shin Issei since I'd immigrated from Europe and had never lived in Japan. And I was equally as dumbfounded to discover that concentration camps once existed in California. That history is rarely taught outside the US. I quickly came to the conclusion that I wasn't and would never be Japanese American. At the same time, I struggled to accept my Asian identity. Harboring internalized racism from growing up surrounded by white classmates in Germany and Switzerland, I felt hurt when a school teacher assumed my race and labeled me as Asian rather than two or more races in the school database. Around the same time, my sister and I began going to Japanese school on weekends, as I had done in Europe, and to judo classes during the week, both at the Japanese Institute of Sawtell. Our parents would drive us to Sawtell 4 days a week, and before I knew it, I was embedded in the Japanese American community for the first time in my life. Saturdays after Japanese school were spent shopping at Nijiya Market. In the winter, we participated in Kagami Biraki at the dojo, and in the summer, we danced at the local Bon Odori. Then, just after I turned 13, I was diagnosed with aplastic anemia, a rare and life-threatening blood disease in which the immune system attacks the bone marrow. I needed a bone marrow transplant, doctors told my family, and we'd have to find a perfect match. There's a 25% chance that a sibling is such a match, but unfortunately, my sister wasn't. We turned to the national database of registered bone marrow donors. Finding a match in the donor registry is difficult for someone like me. Not only are there fewer multiracial people to begin with, but racial minorities are also underrepresented in the donor pool. In 2017, 69% of registered donors were white or Caucasian, and only 6% were mixed race. A preliminary search of the database found no matches, so we were told to launch a donor drive aimed at finding mixed race donors. The focus would be on communities with people of mixed Caucasian and Japanese ancestry like me. Without hesitation, the Sawtell community sprung into action. People spread the word about the drive on social media, registered themselves on a database, and my dojo hosted in-person donor drives at judo tournaments. I will never forget that support I received from my teachers, my friends, and people in the community that I had never met. I realized then that communities are not defined by exclusion along arbitrary lines of race or nationality, but by the readiness of people to support each other. I realized that Sawtell and the broader Japanese American community was my community. Eventually, I recovered through a second course of treatment that did not require a bone marrow transplant. I returned just in time to graduate middle school, and I was thrilled to resume judo in Japanese school. Once in high school, I finally learned how to embrace my Asian identity. This summer, I had the opportunity to intern at the Nichibei Foundation through the Nikkei Community Internship. Listening to the attendees of Berkeley's Bon Odori speak about the past, covering the founding of a new Japanese American youth organization, and cheering on Shohei Ohtani with my fellow NCI interns at Oracle Park, I felt myself integrating into the Japanese American community in the Bay Area. Just as in Sawtell, SF's Japantown welcomed me with open arms. Over the last 8 years, I've come to see that there's usually no use in overthinking labels of race, ethnicity, or any kind of group. In the end, labels don't tell you or the other people much about yourself. Who we are is shaped by the communities we engage with, the communities we are indebted to.